The Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast is an unscripted and free-flowing conversation that may touch on mature subjects. While the opinions are real, the research probably isn't, and we can't help that Atticus will probably talk about the Knicks.
And here we go.
He trucked dudes. It wasn't just in a preseason game. He did it pretty consistently. He left dudes saying, "What happened?"
You better put some respect on his name when we're talking about the champion, the Davion Clowney.
And I'm just going on eye test here, right? Like, I like the look of this coaching staff, you know?
Alright, enough of this. Let's see what kind of shit we get into today. Lloyd, it's all yours.
3, 2, 1. Here we go. Back for another Sunday afternoon. Little football trash talk for real fans podcast. We've run the gamut. I think we got a couple of divisions to talk about prediction-wise today. But aside from that, we're coming up close, 4 days away from the draft.
Yeah.
People are in a frenzy. All kinds of stuff happening. Browns made a signing. We'll probably touch on that. Even though this is football, Atticus is geared up, and next we're certain to talk about that. Let me give it over to the boys. See what's on their minds.
Well, you know what's interesting about this year's draft is I feel like no two mock drafts are the same this year, which is kind of fun. In years past, you've had like a definite like 3 or 4 guys where it's like, okay, these are definitely like, and this year it's kind of the quarterbacks, but there's so much good talent that there's no like outside of Trevor Lawrence, there's no like just head and shoulders above the rest superstar. So you just have a lot of different mock drafts, a lot of different people going a lot of different places, people trading up, people trading down. Just following the Browns because that's what I do. There's been like mock drafts where we trade up as far. I've seen mock drafts having us trade up as far up as like 12th or 13th to get, Micah Parsons. I've had them seeing us draft trading up to get what's his name? The DB out of South Carolina.
J.C. Horn.
There you go. Yeah. And I've seen us trading back and picking up a DE. So it's all over the place. It's going to be real exciting. I'm real pumped for the draft this Thursday. What do you think?
To that point, yeah, and there's like a real nice assortment of different skill positions available for the first round in this draft. So it's not like heavy quarterback laden or wide receiver laden. Like you got some good linebackers. I mean, the only thing that's probably deficient would be O-line. That looks like is in this draft in the first round, but you got a lot to choose from. And I've seen a whole bunch of mock drafts out there too. And like you said, you follow the Browns, I follow the Giants. I got people saying we should go wide receiver first round. I mean, there are a couple of guys that if they're available, you pick them no matter what. And then you got other people saying you go O-line or edge rusher, but there's a lot of different possibilities in this draft.
So the question I want to ask you guys, out of the 5 quarterbacks that are slated to go in the top 10, which one do you see? Just because I saw it on Cowherd this week, which one do you see? Because every time there's a bunch of quarterbacks taken, there's usually one really good one. There'll be 2 or 3 of them, or 2 additional on top of that one that are like, they'll be solid for their teams. And then you got one that will fail with his current team, but then catch on somewhere else. And you got one that's just going to be an absolute bust. So 1, who do you think is going to be the bust? And 2, just kind of tag with that, do you see any of the quarterbacks maybe sliding a little bit farther than we think? One just for whatever reason not getting picked up to like say the Patriots at 15 or something like that. Lloyd, I'll kick it over to you.
So just going back to the mock draft thing, right? I think it's really interesting. Like 1 and 2 quarterback coming off the board is pretty solid, right? Like you Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. Right, like it's pretty solid right there. Haven't really seen anything get out of the way of that. I have seen Justin Fields' name pop up to number 3, which is super interesting because up till this week, I think that the experts were moving towards Mac Jones in that slot, but I don't. I think Justin Fields might have impressed a lot of people at his pro day. So he's a specimen. So bust-wise, though, like I think that bust-wise could be Zach Wilson, right? And I'm just going to go out on a limb there, right? Like,
I think the Jets are heavy on him right now too.
they're super heavy on him, and you know, he looks super good, you know, but it's still the Jets, right? And I know they got a new coach and they got a new system in place, right? But you know, Salah's not an offensive-minded dude, right? So like, you know, Gorky probably knows a little bit more about this than I do, and he would absolutely counter my point. But, you know, until I see something different coming out of the New York Jets, like Sanchez was not a bad quarterback coming out of college. He was actually pretty fucking good, you know.
He was USC, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Sam Darnold. I thought he had the best upside of any quarterback coming out of that draft, right? Just from, you know, the tangibles that he was bringing to the table. And New York Jets just ate him alive, right? If I was going to pick somebody else, I might lean Trevor Lawrence because I don't know what the Jags are going to do to put a team around him, right? Like, I mean, they do something every decade where they put a solid team together, but it's never really been an offensive powerhouse. And that spells trouble for him, right? Like we've seen him play under pressure when they get to the championship games and he's playing against a higher level of competition. You know, he still wins. Like, I'm not going to take that away from him. And he's like the highest rated quarterback ever in all of draft analysis history. But it's the Jaguars, right? I think Trey Lance is going to be a stud. I really do. I watched a outbreak on that kid, and he's just got the mindset and the skill set. Like, he's pissed. Like, he didn't get any offers from big colleges, so he went to North Dakota State. He lit it up there for a season, right? But then 2020 was what it is. But it just seemed like he had the right mindset, the right drive, the right grit to take it to the next level. So if anybody's going to get traded, I don't know. Like, I don't know where Mac Jones is going to go, right? I think Mac Jones could be a quality NFL quarterback, right? I think he's got tangibles to do that. I don't know if it's going to be with the team that drafts him.
Plus, he's got a cool last name too, right? Mac Jones.
Mac Jones.
It just rolls off the tongue nice, doesn't it?
He should be a PI on some program.
Well, no, I mean, if we're going with the name test, Trey Lance. I mean,
Trey Lance, that's a good one too.
Yeah, Trey Lance. That screams at it. Like, what other profession other than NFL QB could a guy named Trey Lance really be doing? Like some sort of like, I don't know, maybe like high end like defense lawyer. Like, but other than that, like Trey Lance, yeah, you're an NFL quarterback. That does not surprise me that's gentleman's name. I'll throw my 2 cents in. We'll kick it over to Atticus, but yeah, I'm kind of on board with the Zach Wilson for a couple reasons. One, yeah, you know, he's going to the Jets, which I like Saleh as a head coach, but he's a rookie head coach, and he's in a tough coaching division. They're like 2 bona fide, you know, good coaches in there, and plus you got Belichick on top of that, who's arguably, you know, top 5 coaches of all time, if not the best coach of all time. So that's a tough division to cut your teeth in as far as like being a rookie head coach. That being said, the other thing on Zach Wilson is his scouting report reads a whole lot like Sam Darnold's does, and we just saw what New York did to Sam Darnold. So you're trading Sam Darnold to just kind of get a younger Sam Darnold as far as the scouting reports read. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, so yeah, he made a couple throws, but you know, in college he has the same kind of thing. He kind of has that gunslinger mentality, needs to work on his footwork, throws some balls he shouldn't, gets picked off a little more than he should. He's Sam Darnold. He's Sam Darnold 2.0, or maybe even Sam Darnold clone might be more accurate description there. As far as quarterbacks sliding, it's going to be whoever between Justin Fields and Mac Jones, whoever the Niners don't take. I still don't believe the Niners gave up what they gave up to come up to number 3 to draft Mac Jones. That just still doesn't sit right with me. I think that's who we're going after is just a smokescreen. Why? You're the 3rd pick. Why? I don't know why you need to play that game with the 3rd pick, but it just doesn't seem like that's who they're, but whoever they don't pick is the one I see sliding maybe into the later first round, like, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range. But yeah, I'm leaning Mac Jones because I just can't see the Niners giving up what they gave up to trade all the way up to 3. I mean, that's what they gave up. That's like career on the line type movement, right? Like if that doesn't work, you're fired as a GM, you're in trouble as a head coach at like very least you're going to be in serious trouble as a head coach with as far as your future with the team goes. So that seems like a lot to bet on Mac Jones, who people, prior to them trading up and saying we're taking Mac Jones or hinting at it, we're saying was the 4th or 5th best quarterback in this draft. So yeah, with that being said, Atticus, what are your thoughts?
You're muted somehow.
You're muted.
I think a lot of the success of these quarterbacks coming out of the draft are going to be largely dependent on the coaching. I think it's safe to say that we all agree that Trevor Lawrence is just an unbelievable talent coming out of the draft. Watching him in college, I remember the first time I saw him play, I was like, look at this skinny girl-like dude and he was just ripping. And it didn't matter who what defense he went up against. He had some stellar performances in his college career. I think the level of competition in college also says a lot, how many starts that you got as a quarterback. I think that's a large part of the reason why Dwayne Haskins didn't do well coming out of Ohio State in 2020. I mean, that team was just stacked with talent. And I think the team just made him look better. And Ohio State just runs the gamut on their competition. So when you look at Justin Fields coming out of there, it makes me pause a minute to wonder, would he be the one to slide based on the amount of talent that surrounded him in Ohio State also? So I really think it largely depends on coaching, and it's too soon to tell. Slay is a defensive-minded coach, but I've seen some defensive-minded coaches let the offense be run wholly through their offensive coordinators. I don't know if he's going to be a signal caller on the sideline. I can't imagine that he would want to take on that role. I would think that he's going to put that in the hands of whoever he hires as his or has in place as his offensive coordinator. So I think the jury's still out on that. I don't know who's going to slide. I think Mac Jones is probably going to do okay. You think about the draft order. You got the Jags. They're taking Trevor Lawrence. I agree with what Mike said about the Jets, and it's kind of like a stigma that surrounds them more than anything that I could rely on with their coaching staff on what they're going to do with Zach Wilson, because you don't know. You just say it's almost like the way that you framed the Browns 10 years ago. It's the Browns. It didn't matter who the fuck came out of the draft. You thought they were going to be a bust because they were going to the Browns, and that's who the Jets have become. You kind of think that they're going to ruin the career of who would have otherwise been a solid quarterback in this league. So if I had to take a guess, it's really a coin flip. Trey Lance, I honestly don't know enough about to comment on him, so I'm not going to say much about him. But if I had to, I'm going to have to go with, I hate to say it, but Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State. I just don't have the faith that he had enough of his individual talent that he was forced to win games out there.
Well, the one thing I will say to that is, does Ohio State have any other first-round prospects this year outside of Justin Fields?
Let's take a look.
Like, I can't think of any other Ohio State player that's projected to get maybe.
No.
So,
Not in the first round.
So he doesn't, like, I get what you're saying about Ohio State. But I think this year in particular, they just don't have that. They don't have as much NFL talent around them as, like, say, Dwayne Haskins did. My take on Ohio State quarterbacks is, especially since Urban Meyer, now Ryan Day's taken over, they run a really gimmicky offense that I don't think necessarily translates exceptionally well into the NFL, which is the knock, I would say. But that being said, I have a little bit before we segue into the different conferences and the projected win totals. So we talked a little bit last week about the post that kind of had me going going into my I don't give a fuck mode, and so I decided, what kind of posts were my contemporaries posting when the group first started. So I went back in time and I dug up both the first posts for one Atticus J. Davis.
Oh no, you didn't.
For one Michael Loy, and we got some interesting results. So I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see this when I put it up here. But Atticus, in his normal trash-talking form, much to the amusement of my girlfriend, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's a post of a New York Giants cheese grater grating a pile of Green Bay cheese.
Nice. How perfect is that?
Yeah, that's Atticus's first draft pick. That's his first post in the group. Now, this...
What was the date on that?
November 11th, 2013.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. And so from that same day, we have a post from Michael Loy, and in a case of life imitating art and proof that nothing ever really changes over time, it's a post that says, "Giant fans be like, let's go Knicks," and it's two guys in New York Knicks uniform. So,
well, the season was usually over at that point, so
it hadn't even started and it was over.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we got. On that, you guys spent a lot of time ranking on Tony Romo. I feel a little QB jealousy back in the early 2000 teens from you two. But other than that,
that's quite interesting, Chris. And I think that it would make a hell of a post on the page to go back, like look at the top 50, right? Like Andy likes to call them the fam 50, right? There's 50 people that regularly post on the page, right? Go back and get their first post and like make a post about that, right? Like I think that would be a phenomenal discussion.
I mean, not that anyone else that the 6 people that occasionally tune into parts of this podcast would know, but we could just do it on here. That would be kind of funny. I'd be interested to know what Gorky's first post was. So my first post, I actually just happen to remember this one because it's probably the most posts I got the comment on because I came in like a ball of fire. My first post, I couldn't find it exactly just because I did leave the group at one point and then come back. So it has a different first post than what my actual first post was. But I posted that Peyton Manning is the most overrated quarterback in NFL history. That was my first post in the group. So how you doing? Anyway, we don't have to discuss that though. We can let that slide. I think it generated a bunch of comments at the time. Most people were telling me I'm a Browns fan and don't know what I'm talking about. So obviously not much has changed. That being said, I'd like to get into those division, those win total predictions. Do you guys have any thoughts on any of what I just said? Or you guys, Mike's looking pensive. So now
I love it. I want to know what Gorky's first post was. I want to know what Andy's first post was. I want to know what Felix's first post was. I mean, we got
some guys who aren't present, like Sporn, Tamara. Yeah. There's some other. What's the other guy? The 49ers fan. He always talks about Charles. His posts. There were some good ones.
But
bring back Hubbard.
I don't know his name. He only put by the time I was real active in the group, he only made a few posts and then he kind of disappeared. But it was the guy that would always make posts about the Cowboys and have We Dem Boys playing in the background, and he'd just be driving in his truck
he
laughing.
He always disappeared. He came to one of the trash talk barbecues. He had 4 names. He was Carlos at one point, and then he was something else, and he just and he was great. He was awesome. He was an active participant, but he would go through these moments where he would disappear. So
yeah, no, I just remember his videos and they were hilarious, and I don't know what happened to that guy. I think about him sometimes. Come back.
He was an admin at one point. That dude Carlos, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was good.
Darby's thought of the day.
Yeah,
bring that back.
The other poster who hasn't posted in a while was who was the Brandon Gorky, Sam Darnold mock account that posted for I want to say a year ago, 2 years ago. I can't remember.
That was Greg.
What?
Greg Pinella.
That was Greg Pinella.
But he made a different account and he had a fake diploma or whatever. I don't even remember.
Hilarious.
Yeah. He left Facebook altogether. Great guy though.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we can make. I can go look up other people's first posts. We can just see what Kelly's first post was. We can have all kinds of fun.
I'm gonna do a fake Darby thought of the day this year. That's a fucking great idea. I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna make a fake account, and I'm gonna be the fake John Darby thought of the day.
Do it. I love it.
Nothing like alienating our few listeners by talking about things they have no idea about. Anyway, so let's segue from that. So last week we did the North and the East. I'd like to get through a couple more today. So Lloyd, you got the win totals in front of you there. You can just go ahead and pick a division. We can just go through.
Did we do the AFC East?
No, we didn't do the AFC East. We just did the NFC East and the AFC North. So.
Let's start with the AFC East.
Okay.
And they got the Bills at 10.5. I take the over all day long.
Because there's 17 wins, 17 games, I'll take the over. I think that division is going to be a lot tougher this year. You're going the New York Jets, say what you want about them. I think they're going to improve somewhat. I feel like, at least with they're going to have a new energy, a defensive guy that knows what he's doing. The Dolphins are set up to have a spectacular draft this year. They're really going to be. They had a good offseason. They have like they have 2 or 3 picks, 2 picks in the first round and like a couple more in the second. So they're going to have a lot of, they're going to be reloaded. I just think it's going to be an incredibly tough division. The Patriots, I still think are in the heads a little bit. Like even last year when they were kind of not doing so hot, they still played the Bills tight both games. So I think it's going to be, and plus the Patriots are getting a lot of people back that sat out for COVID as well. So I just think the division is going to be really hard because there are 17 games. I think they'll get to 11, but it's going to be a hard fought 11. It's not going to be a cakewalk.
See, I say no problem because when you look at last year, playoffs included, they won 9 games at home, right? They have 9 regular season games at home this year. So, if they win 7 of those, they're only 3.5 games away from hitting the mark. So it just, I don't see them not doing it. But I will agree with you on the Patriots being a tough route this year, right? Like, and I have no viable evidence to show me otherwise. But if there's ever going to be one team that was overly aggressive in free agency and spent a shit ton of money and made it work, it would be the Patriots, right? No team typically does, but I could see this very well happening for them, right? Like they just spent a shit ton of money. They plugged some holes. They brought in 2 tight ends, and that's how they won, right? With a 2 tight end offense. So Miami, I'm not as so like their over and unders 9. I'm not sold on Tua right now at all. I got to see another full season and see what he can do. I think their defense is fairly stellar. I love their coach, but I still think they got a little bit of ways to go. And the Jets, I just don't know, right? Like, will they be better? Yes, but I also don't think it's going to be leaps and bounds better, right? It's still they won 2 games last year, 2.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Jets are suddenly going to jump up and win 8, but I think they're going to be more energized this year. Like you could see it last year. Like they didn't even want to show up on Sundays half the time. I think they're going to be more energized this year, and I think they're a prime team to win a couple games that they shouldn't. So and of course, and if you were going to tell me they're going to win a couple games they shouldn't, I'd say it's going to come against a division foe, right? So that's just my thing. But yeah, I think we touched on it before. 5-6 wins for them is going to be a good marker, I think.
For the Jets?
The Jets, yeah.
Yeah, they got their over-under at 6.
Oh, so there we go. 5-6. So,
yeah.
I'd say that's right about where they should be. I'd have a hard time saying over that, but I think that's a good indicator. The one thing I'll say about the Patriots is, regardless of the talent they have on the field, I think Bill Belichick is still just kind of in the heads of the teams there, at least for another season or 2. So I think that just plays a factor. But anyway, I'll back out and Atticus, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely the over. Like So the Bills own that division right now. There's not even a question about it. It would be very different. I think the conversation would go very differently if the Bills were like eking out wins between their division opponents and some of the other talent that they had to face. They were destroying other teams. And the end of the season, even in through their playoff run, when the season started to come to its conclusion, these guys looked unbelievably good. I mean, Josh Allen, the talent that he was able to put on a field, he would make plays from one side of the field, and you're never supposed to throw back to the other side, and he would do it as if it was a designed play, even though it was a broken play, and he just looked spectacular. The defense was playing well. I don't know that the Patriots, and I get it, the name recognition that comes with Bill Belichick and thinking that he may still be in their heads, but I don't think that phases the Bills not one bit. If we're just talking about the Bills, the strength of their schedule, the talent that team has, what they did in free agency, if they're going to win more than 10.5 or less than that, I don't know how you could even form an argument to say that they win less than that. I'm taking it over. I
also think I will say they had one of the most underrated signings of the offseason when they picked up Emmanuel Sanders. So, that adds a KG veteran that's been to the Super Bowl a couple times, makes the playoffs.
Had the game-winning catch in the Super Bowl too.
Yeah. So he's been
paired
there
with Diggs, who has been unleashed. He got unleashed last year, coming from Minnesota, where they're a run-heavy offense. We didn't see that Diggs. We saw it last year.
He was good in Minnesota too. Now
he was good, but we never
good with a Josh Allen.
Yeah, he was good, but like the passing game was a secondary thought in Minnesota, right? Like they've always been run-heavy. So putting him in a pass offense with Josh Allen, who can throw the ball a country mile, just unleashed a new version of Diggs. So with Sanders, I great point, Chris.
I said more about Kirk Cousins than it did about Stephon Diggs and his talent.
Big game Kirk Cousins. Why you gotta bring him up?
What was his slogan? His logo?
You like that?
You like that? Yeah, you like that.
Browns. Anyway, so let's slide over to the Dolphins. I think you said they were over-unders 9. Is that what you said?
Yep, they're over-unders 9 as well.
That one's tough.
That is tough.
I'm gonna go over. They won 10 last year. You'd assume another year they're gonna gel a little bit more. I could see him hitting 10 wins again, especially again with 17 games. I see him getting 10 wins. They're in Miami. They're a tough out because you got teams from the cold coming down to play in the Miami Heat. That takes it out of you when you're not used to it. So I could see them. I could see them getting 10 wins just because that's what they did last year. I haven't seen them do anything that would make me think otherwise. The defense is still there. Was this a team that brought back 19 people or something like that?
19 out of their 22 starters. Number 5 defense.
So that's. I don't see a reason why they would slide back to less wins than they had last year, unless their schedule is just suddenly that much tougher. Tua is still kind of a question mark, but they seem, at least for this year, to be behind him. And I think we're going to see an offense. We kind of touched on it when we talked about their recap earlier. He stepped into an offense that was built around a different type of quarterback. This year, we're going to see, an offense built around his skill set, and they're going to draft to his skill set. So I think you're going to see him improve a little bit. So yeah, I think they're going to. I'll take the over on them with 10 wins is where I see them landing. It's still kind of weird though to think that 10 wins means you're 10-7. That just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound as impressive as 10-6.
It's really weird putting that together for this season. That extra game, I think, throws Vegas in a tizzy, to be honest.
Right. Especially if, like, at the end of the season, you got, like, say, Miami fighting for a playoff spot against, I don't know who their 17th game is, but they're just randomly paired against, like, the 4th best team in the AFC, or in the NFC South or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just real random. I feel like that's going to be like the X factor is going to throw a lot of things off this year. But still, 10-7 just doesn't sound nearly as impressive as 10-6. But I digress.
I'll tell you what, only because of the extra game And their extra game is against the Giants this year, by the way.
Their extra win is what you're saying.
For the Giants, yeah, I agree. I love Brian Flores, right? I think he was one of the most underrated coaches who came out and showed that he deserved that coaching job, and he did a very, very good job, especially on a defensive front. Coming into the season, they did push all their cards on the table with Tua. Last year, when they had a chance to, I forget what game it was, but they sat a red-hot Ryan Fitzpatrick and put Tua in, and Tua looked like he had no clue what he was doing. He shouldn't have been on the field. I forget which game it was, but if we went back, I'm sure we could pull it up. But they said, you know what? And I think it's to your credit what you said, Chris. They're going to design and build this offense around his skill sets moving forward. But what does that mean for this team? That means you're changing everything for this guy. Not on the defensive side. The defense is going to continue to play well. But offensively, are they going to be able to produce points when they need them? In the clutch, game is real tight. Going into the 2-minute warning, they got the ball. Can they get the touchdown to win the game? I don't know that they can. So normally with, what is it? 9 games they're projected to win. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Over under's 9.
Shit, I think they're right at 9. I don't know how you go, because it can go either way on that one. But I'm going to say they're going to meet it. They're going to finish the end of the season with 9 wins, and they're going to be 9-8. That sounds worse than 10-7, 9-8. But I think that's almost like 500 now, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I think they're going to go 9-8. I don't see that. And they got a lot of picks coming out of the first round this year. I still think this is kind of there's a lot of chemistry that needs to be built when you got that many players coming out of the draft. And I don't know. I'm just not sold on Tua yet. I'm not saying I can't be. I'm saying right now, given the body of work that he's put on film in his first year, I was left with more questions than answers about that kid. He just did not meet up to the first round potential that he was hyped up to be.
Real quick, I just want to ask a quick question, and we'll go over to Loy. You mentioned Brian Flores. I think that he's kind of already there. He's off the Belichick tree. There's been a lot of coaches that have burned out really quickly off the Belichick tree. If he has another successful season, like let's say they do get to 10 wins again this year, is it too early to say he's the best product of the Belichick tree? Do you think he's in that conversation yet? Because who else is there? Bill O'Brien, meh. Josh, what's the offensive coordinator? Daniels, meh. None of these guys have lasted more than 3 seasons anywhere, much less put up 20 wins in their first 2 seasons. So he's got to be number 1 off the tree, right?
At this point, you'd have to say
he has the most promising future out of anyone, if nothing else.
He's produced very well out of the gate. I don't think anybody's looking at the job he's done in Miami would say that he hasn't done a good job, if not better than a good job. I don't think there's anybody who's saying, oh my God, what a terrible hire this guy was for this NFL franchise. He's got the team going in the wrong direction. He doesn't have the team behind him in his philosophy. I think anybody would say that he's doing a good job. So for now, yeah, I'd say that.
The Giants coach is from the Belichick tree, right?
He is.
Okay. No disrespect to him. Jerry's still out. He's only
not at all. There's not enough. He don't have enough time in yet.
Yeah. All right, Lloyd, what are your thoughts? 9 wins for the Dolphins.
Slightly over, possibly. And I think a lot of it really depends on two things, right? Is Will Fuller going to be allowed to play, or is he going to pop positive on another test, get suspended again? Because if he's playing and stays healthy, he's a weapon. And I think with the 6th pick, they're going to take Jamar Chase. I just really if they're going all in with Tua, they need to put players around him, and Chase is the man, right? So now you got Fuller and Jamar Chase as your weapons. He has to produce. Right. There's no other question about it. Right. I think everything that we've already talked about, The defense is solid. They're going to remain solid. Flores is a solid coach. He's going to remain solid. It's going to be up to Tua. And like, I wasn't overly impressed with him in Alabama, let alone in the pros, right? Like, and some of that's because he got hurt at Alabama a couple times. It wasn't just once. He got hurt a couple times. So, a lot to be said there. And I don't know who their backup is in Miami anymore. I have no idea. But they better get a solid one. That's all I know.
Isn't it that guy? He was the quarterback drafted by the Cardinals. Josh
Rosen?
Rosen, isn't it Rosen?
I thought he got kicked off the team. I'd have to look at that. Let's go to the Google machine, see what they tell us.
That's the beauty of Google. Who wins? Jacoby Brissett?
Oh, there you go. That's not a bad
backup.
That's a quality backup to have, actually.
Yeah.
You can do a lot worse. Maybe they go after Teddy Bridgewater. Who knows?
I got a question. So, did Washington snag Fitzpatrick, or did Miami just decide they were going to move on from him?
They decided they were going to move on from him because once you have a starter and you go to the backup and he's now your guy.
Right. But what I'm saying, so is Fitzpatrick not who you would want, and you would want Brissett over Fitzpatrick to back you up?
If Fitzpatrick was my prior starter, yes.
Okay.
And especially because, like, I look at it too, I like to pair, at least, and this is just a me thing, there's no like scientific data to back this up or anything, but like Jacoby Brissett is what I'd like to consider the floor for Tua. Like, that's as bad as that, like that's the floor. So if
really,
I like
that
my
says a
quarterback
lot about Tua.
Like, if I'm going to have, I'm not saying he is the floor. I'm just saying, like, I'd like Tua to be better than him. So if he struggles to show better than Brissett in preseason, I think that tells you they'll be looking at a quarterback next year, right? So, and I like when my quarterbacks play styles match. Like Jacoby Brissett, whether you think he's better or worse, their games are going to be similar. Completely different.
Their style of play.
Exactly. If Tua were to go out and Brissett comes in, you're not changing the whole playbook.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So just to recap, so the Bills we all have going over. I have the Dolphins over. You guys have them pushing for the most part.
I go slightly over.
Okay, so both Loy and I have them over, so it's like 10 wins. Both of us are like lukewarm on them. Atticus is a solid push at best. So that brings us to who else is in there?
I mean, we got the Patriots at 9. So they won 7 games last year with 0 talent, right? They had a lot of players sitting out. They had a lot of players leave. They were in transition. They pulled out 7 games. They have infused this roster with a shit ton of players. How's that going to work out? I think, again, I think 9's probably a push, right? Possibility of 10 could be realistic because they have the extra game in there. But I think 9 and 8 is probably more likely. With the players they brought in, if they can't win 2 more games than they did last year, then that's a problem. Then we can stop talking about Belichick being the greatest coach of all time.
And that means they wasted a shit ton of money in free agency too.
Yep.
I'm going to say the interesting thing about this year is we're going to have to see Belichick do something he's never done before. And that's presumably groom a rookie quarterback to take over the reins at some point in this season. We've never seen that under Belichick. He's had Brady basically, like when they made the switch to Brady, it's because Bledsoe got hurt. So there wasn't like we're grooming Brady and then when do we switch? It was, Bledsoe's out now. Oh, look, Brady happens to be the greatest quarterback of all time. So we've never seen Belichick have to do this balancing act of keeping your Cam Newton quarterback happy while grooming whoever they draft to take over for him. I think that'll be interesting. And because of that, I think that I'm going to take the under. It's going to be a slight under, like 8 wins, 8 and 9 is kind of where I see him at, just simply because they're still in transition. Next year, if the transition year was last year and now then I would take the over. But right now, just they're going to have a quarterback transition at some point who's going to make rookie mistakes. It's going to be interesting seeing Belichick handle a rookie quarterback. We don't know how he's going to do in that situation. We don't even know who the rookie quarterback is at this point. So, I see the under. I see 8 wins for some of the other reasons. Miami's good. I think I see them getting 10 wins. I see the Bills getting 10 to 11 wins. So you got to go under somewhere. And I think that's going to be the New England Patriots with about 8 wins, 7 to 8 wins. I could see them coming through with again.
I think it's tough to say. I think, there are a lot of players who opted out of the 2020 season who are returning. They spent a ton of money in free agency, and we don't know what their draft is going to look like. I've no idea what their draft board is like. I mean, where do they pick at 15? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be available for them to sign for them to draft as a quarterback at that point that we think they would pick? Who the hell knows? I'll say this: 9 wins. Like Mike was saying, they have to win more games than they did last year based on the amount of money that they spent in free agency. And if they don't, it's not going to be pretty for them. It's hard to say where they'll be. And I think that the first quarter of the season, well, it's not even the first quarter anymore, is it, with 17 games? I'm going to still say the first 4 games of the season will point us in a direction of where they're going. But I'm going to take the under on that. I don't know. There's not enough. I just don't know. I'm going to take the under on it.
Well, and I think the other thing you got to consider is Belichick can, unless he does something extreme like go 0-17, he's not going to face any pressure yet, right? Like he's still, they have Cam. There's too many things he can point to and say, well, Cam's not really the quarterback of the future, blah, blah, blah. Like there's just all kinds of things where he's still kind of got a mulligan year to kind of test things out. And so for that, I just see too many things where we're just going to see a transition. We're going to see just a bunch of different things where they're trying different things out. They have a whole team that's kind of coming to basically a brand new team, right, from even last year. I just think there's just, there's going to be chemistry. There's going to be a bunch of things that come together. I think they'll be tougher at the end of the year. But, yeah, I see them struggling to get to that 9.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
We got 2 unders and a push. And I'll say this. I think Belichick gets 3 or 4 mulligans based on 6 championships, right? Like he can have a couple bad years in a row and he's not going to get fired. I don't see that happen.
Like he and Kraft are really close. But I mean, just to point out, I mean, Peterson brought the first Super Bowl championship to Philadelphia and 3 years later. So
I don't know if you can compare the two,
yeah,
though, right? Like, I mean, it's not like Peterson had a pedigree in Philadelphia for 2 decades. You know what I mean? Like Philadelphia let Andy Reid go, and then boom, he's in the Super Bowl 2 out of 3 years in Kansas City. You know what I mean? That would be more applicable if I had to say so.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the Jets. I'll just lightly touch on them. I kind of already said it. The over/under was 6. That's going to be my push because I could 5-6 is where I had him pegged without even knowing the over/under. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and give him a push because I do think Saleh is just a good motivator. I think that team's going to play hard. They're going to win a game or two. They shouldn't. Plus, they're going to have an easy schedule because they only won 2 games last year. So I think they're going to be more competitive. It's going to be, they're going to go as far as their rookie quarterback can take them. We're going to see, what Saleh learned from Shanahan and how far they can bring that. So push, possibly a slight under at 5 wins, but I'm going to say push.
I'll say 5 or 6 wins. I think that they're going to go as far as the coaching's going to take them. I think at the end of the season last year, the Jets organization as a whole, they just gave up. There was no desire to even win. And that type of thinking and thought process, it just festered throughout that entire organization. If this coaching staff can't bring them into the mind frame of we can win this game, even games that they shouldn't win, to play hard, to pick up the lunch pail and put on their hat, strap up their boots, go out there and play hard. If Saleh can do that to them, and I have every reason to believe that he can, they'll win 6. But if they struggle with that, and if the coaching is not on par with their quarterback and getting that defense riled up the way that we know Saleh can, they're going to win 5 games or 4 even, But I'll say this, anything over 2 wins, Saleh's good. I mean, he's got some time to build that team. He can win 4 or 5 games this year, and that's a success for the Jets. So I don't think that they're looking at the over under 6 games and saying, yeah, okay, let's win. I don't think they're paying attention to this kind of stuff. They're just going to try to put their game plan in place and win some games, and the coaching is going to decide how well they do.
Well, I mean, the Jets did beat the anointed Super Bowl champion Cleveland Browns last year. So there's
our receiving core and
there's that.
But yeah, they did.
Quickly, Mike.
Excuses.
Mike, he chimed in.
He did chime in quickly.
You did not even finish your and he was ready.
It's like he knew it was coming.
I knew someone was going to. I thought Atticus was going to say it, so I was sitting on that factoid.
No.
What I look at the Jets is I'm going under. Right? I mean, they have a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach, and that doesn't bode well. Where I think you're going to see the improvement is they're going to lose a lot of games by less than a touchdown. They're going to be a lot closer than they were last yeyear. Last year, they weren't even close. Like, I think they had 1 game that they lost out of their 14 that was within, a field goal or a touchdown, right? And they beat the Rams by 3, and the Rams were not a good team last year. So we're not a great team, let's just say. I just think that it's too big of a leap to go over 6. With everything in the division that's going on, where you have some solid play. Typically you would think 3-3 in the division. I don't think they go 3-3 in the division. They might go 2-4. They might go 1-5. Right? They might win 1 game out of their 3 opponents. Like, I could easily see Miami beating them twice, and I could easily see Buffalo beating them twice. They've always played the Patriots tough, so there's that. But they did lose twice to them last year, so they were 0-6 in the division, and it wasn't even close. So it's one of those things where, you're going to see, some of those moral victories where they played hard, they played well. And like, we don't like to rest on moral victories, but, any sign of improvement is going to be a good thing for the New York Jets.
And that matters for a 2-win team.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going under.
So just to recap on the AFC East, everyone was over 10.5 for the Bills.
Yep.
We had Loy and I were over, and Atticus pushed on the Dolphins, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Yep. We were all under on the Patriots. I was under on the Patriots.
I'm under on them.
Pushed.
And then I pushed on the Jets. And then both of you are under, if I'm not mistaken, with Atticus saying it wouldn't surprise him if they pushed, I think was kind of the takeaway there. So I think that's pretty accurate. Vegas knows what they're doing. You want to kick it over to the NFC North, since we did the AFC North last week?
Sure. NFC North, we'll go Chicago first. 7.5.
Under. Yeah. They have a defense, but the defense is starting to get older. They kind of somehow tripped their way into the playoffs last year, but there's just a bad vibe around that team. They started out the gate last year like 5 or 6, and it was like 5-0 or 6-1 or something along those lines. And they're like the most like disrespected 5-win team in history or something like that. It's just that there's just a bad vibe around that team. I still don't know what they do on offense. Their offense is abysmal, and their defense is getting older. They're starting to lose people off that defense. And plus, when something always seems to happen when you try to trade for somebody and like the list of people you're willing to give up for that somebody, in this case, Russell Wilson, comes out and like players see their name on this list and they're like, oh, really? Just bad mojo about that team. I don't think Nagy's a great coach. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be, or as of right now, it's Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
I mean, his best days are behind him, though. You know, like he was good in Cincinnati. He played adequate in Dallas last year, but like, you know, he's in a lose-lose situation if you ask me, going to Chicago, right? Like their offense, they have too much uncertainty.
He played adequate in a team that was built for offense too. Like keep that in mind. Chicago is not the same offensive juggernaut that Dallas has the potential to be. So yeah, I don't see 7.5. I see 5, maybe 6 because there's the extra game. That's as good as I'm giving them. I honestly don't think they're much better than the Jets are right now, to be completely honest. Other than their defense.
The past 2 years, Chicago had these really lofty expectations, right? Joe Nagy's this great quarterback. They've got Trubisky, who's got this rocket arm. They had a good running game. They had some really good pieces in place on their defense. And we played Chicago. They were the most unimpressive team with a winning record the last 2 years that I'd seen in a long time. It was tough to watch some of their games. They found a way to win, but it was always on some trick play or a special teams. It was never because their offense was like clicking on all cylinders and their defense shut it down. It was just rough to watch. So with that being said, I'm not even impressed remotely with what they did in the offseason. This is not a knock on Andy Dalton. But Mike, you said it. His best days are in the rearview mirror. When you bring this guy in and you think that, because what is your first objective as a team? Is to win the games in your division. Do you really think Andy Dalton is poised to beat an Aaron Rodgers? And not for nothing, I think Kirk Cousins is better than Andy Dalton. And that's not saying a whole lot. And then you really don't know what's going on with Detroit, because that whole team just – I don't even know what to say about Detroit right now. You give away Stafford and take Goff. And Goff, I've always said, is overrated. I think if I'm going to take a shot at the over-under, and where are they at? 7.5? Their win total?
Yeah.
I'm going under. I don't see it.
I don't see it either. What if Chicago were to trade up to Carolina's pick at 8 and get Trey Lance?
They still got Nagy.
Yeah, and they still don't have great offensive weapons. And now you're giving up capital, and that's the thing too, right? Because they managed to stumble into the playoffs last year. They're a team that should be picking in the top 15, and they're picking like in the 20s. Yeah. Like I think they're 23, maybe. I forget what number they are, but they're back there, right? So it's like they're in a place they shouldn't be because they just somehow managed to land a wild card spot in spite of themselves.
20. They're at 20.
20. So yeah, they're picking farther back than they should. They should be a top 15, possibly even a top 14 pick team. Yeah, they'd have to trade up too much, and then what? So you get a rookie quarterback with Matt Nagy, and you still don't have an offense.
They're in a rebuild and haven't acknowledged it yet.
Yeah, they're. I'm going to say the same thing about the Bears I've been saying about the Steelers. They just need to go through this year, bottom out. Thank Dalton for his services and start again next year.
Do we want to say that though? Do we want to be like the NBA though, and see our teams tank for draft picks?
I don't think you can tank in the NFL, right? Unless you pull Jalen Hurts in the third quarter against a team in the
second. No, you know why I asked that though, because that's kind of what has separated the NFL from other leagues. Is the NFL doesn't tank. They play hard. They're supposed to anyway.
You're going to get hurt if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get hurt if you don't play hard. Like, it really depends on what level of quality athlete they put on the field, right? That's the only way they could tank, but you can't not play at 100%. You just can't, because it's a violent game. It's the only sport that we know where the purpose is I am going to maul the dude in front of me, period. I am going to overpower him.
I get that, but you can tank without still trying. Like, if I'm trying to win a playoff spot or make it to the playoffs again in that division where I have to go against Aaron Rodgers twice, Kirk Cousins with Delvin Cook isn't that's a formidable duo. You don't go out and pull Andy Dalton. You know what I'm saying? Like, Cam was a free agent. Teddy Bridgewater, you could trade for. Like, there are moves you could make if you're trying to convince me you're trying to do things. So yes, you can tank while still putting people out there who are going to try. You just purposely put bad people out there.
Yeah,
right?
But the question is, do we want to see that in the NFL?
I mean, what are you going to do though? Like, it's kind of one of those things, because like the way the draft is set up in the NFL, like, at least the thing I like about the NFL is because Miami did this 2 years ago. Like, what was it, by opening day? Like, so they sent out their season ticket paraphernalia, and by opening day, like, half the projected starters were gone already. Like, you can do the thing about the NFL that I like, that you don't see it like you see it in the NBA, because it's easier to get a generational or like good talent in the NFL draft, like where it's just a complete crapshoot in the NBA's draft. And you are guaranteed, like, if you are bad enough, you are guaranteed a high spot. Like, it's not like, oh, we won one game and now we're picking 10th because that's where our ping pong ball came out. Like,
right.
So it's easier to draft. It's easier to tank, like, just put out a crappy team for a year and then get some good draft picks for the year after that. And, and all it takes in the NFL is one good offseason and you're right back in it. So that, but yeah, if you're serious about things, you're not taking Andy Dalton to be your QB1. I'm sorry, you're not. So, like, if they had made a play for Teddy Bridgewater or Aaron Darnold or anybody, I get they tried for Russell Wilson, but other than that, like, they didn't do anything. Like, they could have given up what the Panthers gave up to get Darnold. At least then I believe they were trying. They're not trying. So,
yeah, I agree.
So we got them under.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Detroit 5.
I'm going to take the over on Detroit. I think they're better than a 5-1 team, but I just can't see that. I think Detroit can be. Jared Goff isn't my favorite player, but I think he's better than Andy Dalton. So I think that if you look at their division, I think Detroit can actually, believe it or not, if it weren't for the running game and depending on how healthy Minnesota stays, I think that Detroit can, in their division, win 2 or 3 games. And then they'll get a couple of effort wins in there too. And they're going to have a weak schedule this year. So I think they'll get 5 or 6 wins this year.
I'm going to say push. So that's 5 wins. There's just too many question marks. New coaching staff. Goff obviously isn't the long-term answer. They have some decent pieces on offense, but their defense isn't anything to write home about either. I just think there's too many question marks to go over. I don't even know enough about him to really have a lengthy conversation about it, so I'm just going to say push.
Didn't he slide so far off a cliff, though? In 1 year. Jared Goff is like, you have no faith in this guy.
It's unbelievable what happened to Jared Goff in my mind, right? Like, I don't even understand it, like just from a fantasy perspective, right? When I would pick up Cooper Kupp, it was Cooper Kupp slant across the middle, 15 to 20 yard pass, gone, touchdown, right? Like, and then he's got a cannon too, so I don't know what happened, right, with Jared Goff, but I don't think he's as bad as what they gave up to get Stafford.
He showed a lot at the end of the season. He 10 days removed from finger surgery on his throwing hand, and he played well, but they still let him go. And for peanuts, if you ask me.
Well, they got Matt Stafford out of it.
No. Yeah, but Matt Stafford is. Well, I guess you're right.
They got Stafford, but they gave up Goff.
They gave up
and a shit ton.
Yes.
Like I yes, it's Stafford, but they gave up the house.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this about Goff. In my opinion, he's a system quarterback more than anything. Because when did he start to go downhill? When Gurley got injured, and then because once Gurley got injured, they made it to the Super Bowl that year, but he was abysmal in the Super Bowl.
Terrible.
Hasn't really been the same since. He's dependent on a good running game and a system quarterback, and the system they run in LA, they build around the running game. They establish the run. They have all the crazy motions and formations. They, like 7 different looks out of the same formation, and they're all runs. And then they play action pass off of that. And once they didn't have the run game, Goff is not good enough to pick it up and shoulder the load. So I think that's why you saw him out, and that was the fault. Like once he didn't have a consistent good running game, he was not consistent and good either. So he goes as the running game goes.
I like their coach though. Let's see what he does. Dan Campbell's a good dude.
They have him at 5. I'm gonna go over for some reason, right? Like I like DeAndre Swift. I like TJ Hawkinson. I like DeAndre Swift. Chris.
You have one good half of fantasy football with a guy, and suddenly you're buying his jersey.
I think picking up Rashard Perriman, I think that's a sleeper. From a wide receiver position. I think Tyrell Williams is decent as a number 2. Like I think they have some players, and I think did they sign Trey Flowers? I think they did from New England. He's a good dude. He's a solid defensive player. So, I mean, not that they're going to make any waves and contend for the North, right? But they're going to compete. And I think they win, especially with the extra game. The extra game is the kicker. Like, I don't know what Vegas is thinking this year, man. That extra game is going to flip-flop, a lot of win totals and projections, right? So, I think they get to 6.
Since we keep coming up to it, and we'll get to the rest of the North here in a second, how do you guys think they should handle records going forth from here with the extra game? Because now if they have an extra game, right, like you have guys that are going to get extra chances for sacks. You're going to have receivers that get an extra 100 to 200. The potential. Quarterbacks are going to throw for 200 to 300 extra yards a season, 2 to 3 extra touchdowns. Like, how do you stack up? Trying to think of a neutral quarterback to take, so it's not like I'm saying Baker Mayfield. How do you stack up
and he says
Josh
it anyway.
Josh Allen, how do you stack up like a Josh Allen who now has an extra game for the rest of his career to throw touchdowns and everything else against a Warren Moon who didn't, right? Like, will Josh Allen look better than Warren Moon in 10 years because he's had an extra game every year? So he's getting, let's just say on average, 2 touchdowns and 250 more yards a season because of that. Like, how do you rate this stuff going forward?
I have to table that question, right? Because are they going to do what the NBA does and give rest days, right? Are they going to, they already rest. If you're in the playoffs and you're set and you're locked into a seed, like you're pretty much resting week 17 anyway, right? So that's going to continue. And then do they give players certain days off, right? Like that's a lot of wear and tear on a running back, an extra 40, 30 carries a season. That's a lot. That's 30 more hits than you're used to taking. So I don't know what they're going to do with the extra game.
It's a great question. I don't know.
Okay, so we can definitely come back to that. There might be a question. We'll revisit that in a couple of weeks, like after the draft, and we got a couple more weeks until preseason starts.
Can you believe the draft is this weekend coming up?
Know, right?
I'm so excited. I'm trying to convince Lisa to let me live draft. I'm trying not to push too hard because it is her birthday, but I was like, "But your
likes football. Bring her on."
Well, that's what I keep saying. I'm like, you can be on it, and she wants to go to the caveat is she wants to go to a sports bar, which I'm totally okay with. I don't know how well that's going to translate on this if I'm like sitting in a sports bar on my phone trying to react. Although we could see, who knows? That being said, yeah, no, I'm excited about this draft for many of the reasons we already talked about. Like, there's no this draft I think is just going to be more wild than normal, and it's not going to be one of those ones where they're like, well, maybe blah blah blah. I think this year we're going to see teams trading all over the place, doing all kinds of crazy things. There's going to be people drafted in the first 10 that we weren't counting on, people drafted in the first 20 that we were counting on. This year's just got the potential to be like real fun.
Did anybody else read that article about the draft, all trades? So like it was all trades, including the number 1 pick, and it was like Justin Hebert and another dude to, Jacksonville for the number 1 pick. I was like, that's intense. That's quite the spin on the draft, but it was a lot of fun. It was a good article.
Just picking up on that, there's no way that there's no trade that the Jacksonville Jaguars will take. There's no way you get out of a generational talent at quarterback for anything, period.
Really?
Like, unless they can resurrect, like, I don't know, like, 1985 Dan Marino and somehow get him to play for them. There's no way you pass up on that.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Chris, how does it feel to be drafting after 20 when you've drafted in the top 10 for decades? Is this a different feeling for you altogether?
Well, it's funny. So, because it's that time of year, my, the Facebook time hop. And so a couple years ago, we picked at 17, but we ended up trading that pick. I put I always put the over under that the Browns send in a top 3 pick out of habit are like 3-1. 3-1 odds. They'll just accidentally send in a pick out of reflex. It's weird. I'm not going. It's a little weird to be on this side of it. It's cool. It's cool. It's in Cleveland. Like that. If there was any one time I wish I was in Cleveland, other than the Cavs winning the championship, it would be this. This is going to be real fun over on East 9th Street this year. Yeah, it's. I
mean,
weird.
Your team is pretty much in place already, so.
And it's weird is it's different. Like, instead of like looking at the top 10 picks and being like, oh, like maybe this guy will slide to 6. It's like, man, can we trade up? Like maybe like
right.
The thing we were thinking, okay, if this guy slides here, do we have enough to get up to 12 to get him? Like, it's a completely different look. Yeah. Which, yeah. How's that picking in the top 15 feel? Is that?
I you know what? If we don't get the offensive lineman that I want, and I'll take Slater. I know Sewell's going to be gone. I mean, the other guys who Darisaw, I don't know enough about him if he's good or not. But I trade down out of that, that 11th pick. Where are we at? 11 this year?
You're at 11.
Yeah.
Trade out of 11 if we can. Maybe pick up 2 or 3 later round picks and go from there. I like what we did in free agency.
You know what I'd like to see the Giants do, in all seriousness? What? How many picks do you guys have this year? Like, outside
7.
of the first, what else do you have? Do you have like multiple late round picks?
Yeah, we've got 7 picks.
The Bengals are at 5, right?
No, we've got 6 picks. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Bengals are at 5.
I'd like to see them somehow get up to, say, 5 and get Jamar Chase. I would love to see that.
You want the Giants to get up to 5?
To get Chase, yeah.
Wow, he would be a fabulous pick. And it's really hard to form an argument to say why you didn't pick him if you got up to 5. I'd still want a lineman. I want to keep my quarterback upright, create running lanes. I listen, I believe you win teams with your line. Your line is going to be the difference maker. I said win teams, win games, period. It's the line. So that's what I'd want.
Yeah, I don't know why. I like the idea of just crazy explosive offenses all over the place. I kind of, I know I give you crap for the Giants, but like, I think Joe Judge is going to be a good coach going forward. I think he inspires guys, and they show some creativity, the way they move Daniel Jones around, the different things they have to. But Saquon, Galladay, Chase. Say what you want about Ingram, he's still like top 5 for the position. I like it.
Is
he
really?
I get excited.
Is he really?
He is. He is fantasy. He's always up there. Like, I go by fantasy rankings. He's always up there. He produces point wise, which means he's producing on the field. So,
see, Atticus had a post the other day that he wanted only Giant fans to
Only
post on.
Giants fans did comment, though.
No, okay. So, my favorite
that
quote.
was my way of seeing who was really an undercover fan, and it worked.
Whatever you need to tell yourself, man. What the favorite quote coming out of his draft analysis was that overall good hands, but will drop the occasional pass, right? And he dropped some big ones.
Huge.
Big ones.
Huge.
One against the Eagles that would have won the game.
Okay,
That's
but
the one that stands out most to me.
If you drop specific catches, I'm not saying he's clutch. I'm not saying I'd even necessarily want him on my team, but if you just look at his overall production, he's a top 5-6 tight end. Now, in the realm of tight ends, that's not saying a lot because once you get past 3, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. But he's up there.
Right. You're both right. He's going to give you fantasy numbers that's going to make you very happy each week. But he's also going to drop the pass that had you lose the game. So depending on where you are on wanting him to have numbers, or I don't care if you catch one fucking pass, it better be the pass to close out the game against the Eagles. That's the pass that he will drop. Another thing about him, he probably led the league in passes that went through his hands or he tipped and were intercepted by the opponent last year. He is great for that. So Evan Ingram this year is going to decide what the Giants going to do with him. I like bringing in Rudolph because it's going to force him to figure it the fuck out because he's going to have to leave and show and prove or something. But he has frustrated Giants fans more than he's made them happy. This has nothing to do with fantasy. This is as a Giants fan. Oh my God.
I would just like to point out that I finally gave another team a compliment. You guys just grilled me for it. So it's back to F all your teams.
No, you gave a player a compliment.
Based on fantasy.
I said
based on fantasy, right.
I said the coach was good. I was giving props to the
Giants.
Giants.
Remember, Mike, that was his foundation for years. It wasn't his team. It was fantasy. That's what he got hyped for because the win total was maybe 6. But in fantasy, he could kill him.
No, he doesn't really, but that's another story for another day.
Still waiting on my NFC East Championship Cleveland Browns t-shirt, by the way. So getting back to the NFC North.
Before we do that, and I'll go into win totals. If the Giants are going to trade up to number 5, they take Pitts over Jamar Chase all day long. And that would be scary. But anyway, Vikings 8.5.
I'm going to take the over. They're kind of the X factor in the league. If any team's going to make a jump, what did they have last year? What were their wins last year? I don't remember offhand.
I don't know.
I want to say it was a losing record. 7 wins sounds about right to me, but we can get their wins in a second while Mike looks it up. But I will say that I think they're the X factor in this division. I don't see them necessarily dethroning the Packers, but if there's any team you're going to tell me is going to make a big leap forward in that division this year, it's going to be the Vikings. If for no other reason, it's not going to be Detroit and it's not going to be the Bears.
They won 7 last year, by the way. Yeah,
they did have 7 last year. So what was their over under number this year again?
8.5.
8.5. Yeah, I could see 9 wins easily. Especially with that extra game. It's gonna they have that extra game. It's gonna be they have a good running game. They play in a dome. That it's just there's a lot of favorable conditions for them. So I like run game travels, and they have a streaky good defense from time to time. So I'll take the over. Say 9 to 10 wins.
I don't know. I'll give them a push at that only because they've got Detroit and Chicago in that division. So they'll probably win 3 of those games.
8.5 wins.
What's that?
You can't push 8.5 wins. They can't have 8.5 wins. You can't push.
No, I'm saying 9.
Oh, okay.
9. I don't really do the the over-under lingo well. So I'll say 9. I'll say 9 only because of the division that they're playing in. Listen, anything's possible in your division. Your division opponents or who you play the toughest, and you're like, oh my God, these guys really came to ball out. The beginning of the season last year, I think it was, Eagles came out destroying Washington. I think it was 17-0. I turned the shit off. I said, I'm not watching this. And I believe Washington came back second half and just completely dismantled the Eagles. Anything can happen in a division game. And not for nothing, start of the season last year, I think that the Philadelphia Eagles were marginally better than the Washington Redskins. That being said, anything can happen in a division game. So is it possible they beat Green Bay? They've been trying real fucking hard. I mean, their first game of the season, they played them 43-34. They put up 34 points against Green Bay. They won their second meeting with them. So with that being said, some days Mr. You Like That comes out and he gives you reasons to say, yeah, we like that. That was pretty good. But then the next week, you like, the fuck is wrong with you, man? So I just think that based on, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's 10 wins, because otherwise I'd say they'd win 8 games. But now that it's a 17 game season, I'll go with the 9.
I think they bolstered their defense over the offseason. They brought in some players, Xavier Woods, Patrick Peterson. I mean, that's some pretty solid stuff. They're getting up there, but they can still ball. It's their offensive line that I question, right? Like, and you said it earlier, like teams are built on how well your offensive line is, right? And defensive line for that matter. So they got the defense. Does that defense get them to 9 wins? I don't know, man.
Dalton Tomlinson from the Giants too.
Yeah.
He's right in the middle.
I think it does. I think they can get to 9. It's the extra game. I'll go slightly over, right? Slightly. Because they still have Cook, but Cook is also injury prone himself, right? And you said it about Cousins. I don't need to speak on that anymore. And since you mentioned it, that loss to the Redskins was probably the beginning of the end. Like, they just lost all mojo at that point because they had the game in hand.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't just winning. They were destroying.
Yeah. It was like Washington had no answer for any offensive play that Philly ran on them. And then something happened. I don't know what, but it was bad.
It was terrible. Green Bay, 11.
So aside from the fact that I am involved with someone who's a big Green Bay fan, not just on her good side, I feel like every year I look at Green Bay because they've won like 13 games 2 years ago. They won 14 last year. And every year I look at them, I'm like, how are you doing this? You're not going to do that this year. And yet they keep winning that many games. So until they don't do that, I'm going to take the over, say they end up with 12 or 13 because Aaron Rodgers is just angry at the world. Although he just got engaged, so maybe he'll be more mellow this year, which throws my theory out the door. But he's just angry at the world and will that, if for no other reason, to stick it to the Packers management, who seems to keep this debate over whether he's washed up or not, seems to come from that team every year. Just to stick it to the management, he will drag that team to 12 to 13 wins and win the division again. Just because every time I think they're not going to do it, they do it anyway. So until they prove me wrong, they're going to win 12 to 13.
Yeah. They have a brutal schedule. They got to play the Ravens, the Chiefs. I would throw the Steelers in there, but I think they suck. And the Seahawks and the Rams. Like they have a brutal schedule aside from their division games. And the North, we've already talked about this ad nauseum, right? Like the North, they just ball out against each other, man. It's tough, gritty football, especially when it gets cold, right? And it gets cold up there. So, but unless it just implodes between management and Rodgers, I don't see them not winning 13 games. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers is in his 16th year, 37 years old, and he played last year like he was 23 years old and in his fourth year in the league. And he bowled out every single game. And he did it very easily. He didn't look like he broke a sweat on some of those plays. In those games where he was handled, he looked frustrated. And he took control and led his team the way that you would want your leader to do it. I don't think he's missed a step. I think he's going to continue to produce until he shows me reason to think otherwise. To Chris's point, and I don't think it had anything to do with your relationship. I think that Green Bay finds a way to just perform and perform very well. They are still in the conversation going deep into the playoffs. At the end of the season last season, you saw that next season they would be a playoff contention team. Their division, the division games are always tough, but that's Aaron Rodgers' division. Who else can you realistically see on his heels coming to take over that division? I don't see anybody. I don't see any of those teams. In fact, I would dare say that the Minnesota Vikings are probably a year or two away from, you need to start rebuilding this organization right now. I don't know if Detroit thinks that they're building it with Goff. I think, Mike, you said that he's not the answer for them, not the long-term answer. He's there, but is it possible he has a breakout year and plays very well? I don't know. I don't think so. And we know that Andy Dalton ain't the long-term solution in Chicago. So that division, Aaron Rodgers could easily win 5 division games in that division. But then you said the strength of schedule. It's a tough one. I think brutal is the word that you use to describe their schedule next year. 13-3 they finished. Will they win 13 games this year? Now, who are they matched up against this year? What division? The North?
AFC North. Yeah, because we
NFC North
already have a certain games circled on that. Yeah, they're against the AFC North, and it sounds like the AFC West.
That's tough. I don't know if I see 13 games. I'm gonna take the under. I think they'll win 12.
The under is 11.
I thought you said they were going to win 13.
That's what I'm saying.
That's taking the over. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they win 13.
They're at how many are projected to win? 12?
11. 11's the over.
Oh, they're projected to win 11.
No, 11's the over. So that's the line. So yeah. So if you want over, it's 12 or more. If you want under, it's 10 or less.
No, they'll win 11, maybe 10. I'm gonna take the under still. I think that they just have a tough, and not for nothing, that's still not bad to finish at 10 or 11 wins. They'll win the division with 10 or 11 wins in the NFC North next year, but their schedule is it's tough. It's really tough.
But I will say, I mean, their schedule is always tough. I mean, that's the one thing I'll give them, because they won what, 12 games 2 years ago, so their schedule is still tough. Their schedule is tough every year, and if you line them up, if you just line up their player, take the titles off, and just line up player by player, I don't know how they do it. I can't be on. I'll be honest, I don't know how you do it, because every year I look at this team, and it's every year the same moniker. Well, they're the worst 12-3 team ever. And I agree with that, but yet somehow every year they are there in the NFC Championship game, right? So, like I said, unless something happens to Aaron Rodgers or like Lloyd alluded to, like it just completely implodes between him and management, I have no reason to doubt that they're going to win at least 12 games.
And that's possible because remember last year they could have had a chance to win that game. I think it was a playoff game actually, where the coach decided to kick a field goal and relied on his defense to get the ball back and didn't. And they ran the clock out on him. And that was a topic of discussion for a long time. In the interview after the game, it didn't have Aaron Rodgers feeling pretty good about the coach's decision.
Well, there was rumors that he was going to get traded this offseason. But again, as long as he's there and he's pissed off at the world, Aaron Rodgers, they're going to win 12. That's just.
And here's the thing about Aaron Rodgers. You know, you said he's in his 16th season. He didn't play the first 3 years. So
Right.
He's got 13 seasons as a starter. 2 of those, I think he got injured. He has not thrown more than double-digit interceptions in over a decade, right? Like, he just doesn't throw. He threw 48-5 last year. 48 touchdowns, 5 picks. I mean, he was savage at the quarterback position. Why this fucking organization does not go out and get him get him a number 1 receiver, please. You know,
number 2 receiver, Davante Adams.
Number 2, they do have Davante Adams. Get him somebody else to play along Davante Adams. Get him. I don't even want to say it, but it's the first name that comes to mind. Get him a Deshaun Jackson-esque dude that just stretches the field and makes the big plays. Get him somebody. You know, like it makes no sense. You have a running game, right? You got 2 quality backs. I think they're not quite the Cleveland Brown duo, but they got 2 quality backs. Yeah, I just gave you a compliment, Chris. Shut the fuck up.
Can you say it a little louder so for when I play this back for Lisa later, she can.
Well, the Cleveland Browns have the number 1 duo in the NFL.
Okay.
In as far as running backs go.
You're saying they're better than Green Bay's?
Without question.
Okay, good.
Without question. Green Bay's in the top 5, right? But get him a receiver.
You know, I almost wonder, like, okay, so how much of it is apathy on the management of Green Bay, and how much is it that you can't just convince people, no matter how much money you try and give them, to come play football in Green Bay, Wisconsin? You know what I'm saying? Like take Will Fuller, right? Because he was linked to them several times last year, and I assume he was a target this year, but he ended up in Miami, right? Like if I'm assuming the money is equal, we're gonna pay you $12 million a year for your talents, Mr. Fuller. Do you go to Miami, Florida, or Green Bay, Wisconsin? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care who my quarterback is. You know, I mean, now we're built differently as fans. We'd say, well, we're going to go play, because we want to win. But
yeah, but there's no tax in Florida. So
tax in
some
Florida.
Business decisions that people make.
And if the money's equal, which we don't know it was, right? But if the money's equal, you're going to Miami all day long.
Yeah,
right.
Better weather, cheaper taxes. So it's really not even equal money anymore. It's more money.
Right.
And that, I know it's a different team, but you got Tom Brady sitting in Tampa Bay. Everybody and their brother wants to go play in Tampa Bay now. They just decided to bring everybody they had back. Miami
we'll
could
see
be
how that works out. I'm real interested to see how that works out.
Well, it's like I kind of touched on it last week. Like they weren't blowing. Like, okay, they won the Super Bowl. I'm not taking that away from them, but they were not blowing teams out all season long, right?
They weren't.
They
barely beat the Giants last year.
Right. They were beatable.
They got hot at the right time, right? Like, I mean, 11 wins is still 11 wins.
Right.
So they won games that, were questionable. But then their defense stepped up to another level in the playoffs where, like, they weren't a lights-out defense, but they were a big play defense, right? So they got the stop when they needed to get the stop. And that's how they rolled. And then they were lights out in the Super Bowl. Like what they did. The
one scary thing I will say about them is they went through Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau, right? That was in Lambeau, wasn't it?
Well, that's the game that we were talking about with Aaron Rodgers being pissed off. They had a chance to win that game.
Right. But they still went through Aaron Rodgers and Lambeau and then turned around and just completely blanked Patrick Mahomes. And that's impressive. I will say that.
They had some referee help in that game too.
Not a whole lot, though, man.
Listen, man, they called everything they could on Kansas City's defense. That first half was ugly.
If Patrick Mahomes was allowed to pass the ball, right, because he didn't have time to throw the ball deep to Kelsey or Hill. If he did, would we have seen the same calls? We can't quite, I mean, yes, there were some questionable calls that looked like it went Tampa Bay's way, right? But would it have been called the same way if it was
We'll
reversed?
never know.
We won't know. Like they were just after Mahomes was like, I think the best meme I saw was that clip from the Little Giants movie with the quarterback running around in the backfield, just running away from all of the opposing team.
And he still threw pinpoint passes that were dropped.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
That's the thing, right? Like in any given game, there's going to be questionable calls that some fans are going to like, some fans are not. The stat that lost Kansas City the game was the fact that Patrick Mahomes ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage in that game. That tells you
the actual stat that they use some next gen stats or something.
That's an actual stat that came out. I talked about it in one of the previous podcasts.
Yep.
He ran for like 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and that's why they lost that game.
What did I say earlier? The line.
Yep.
You need a line.
And they bolstered theirs. And we'll talk AFC West next year or next week.
Look at 2 years ago, since we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. I think it was 2 years ago. His line was so bad. Russell Wilson, no line. Now, these guys find a way to still produce. But can you imagine if they just had a better guard and tackle either side on those lines, how much deeper into the playoffs they could have gone and potentially even won the Super Bowl? Your line means everything to your team. And that's what, unfortunately, you saw happen with Kansas City. Their line did not do a good job. 500 plus yards running in a backfield.
Your
line sucks.
Yeah.
Your line sucks.
And still throwing pinpoint. Like it's like everybody in Kansas City's receiving and tight end core became Evan Ingram. That's what happened.
I'm done giving compliments to other teams. F them all. Actually, it's okay. We're about an hour and a half now, so I do have one question. There was that one trade this week I'd like to touch on because it brings the Browns one step closer to AFC North supremacy. Anytime I'm here for it. Anytime another team in the division wants to trade away a Pro Bowl linebacker, or I'm sorry, Pro Bowl offensive line player. It wasn't as like lopsided as the original headline I read on it made it sound, but the Ravens gave up the offensive tackle. They got Kansas City's. They got a couple picks. It was basically like a tackle and then some pick swaps. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't as lopsided as the article originally made it sound. But yeah, anytime the Ravens want to go ahead and give up offensive line talent, with then they have to play the Browns twice a year with future Super Bowl champion Jadeveon Clowney on one side and future league MVP Myles Garrett on the other. I'm all for it. So
I need some nausea medication.
But no, seriously, do you guys have anything? I
don't even know what happened. I must have missed it.
Kansas City Chiefs traded for Orlando Brown, probably the top three tackles in the league, coming off the Ravens.
Wow.
So the Ravens gave up a huge piece to their offensive line. They got a couple picks out of the deal. They have 2 first-round picks that they're both late, though, right? They're talking 27 and 31 as far as draft picks go. However, the way that this draft is shaping out, like the best offensive tackles coming out of college will probably still be there. At least a couple of them. So they have an opportunity to fill some holes there and into the second round.
And I'm just spitballing here, but this draft in particular is pretty deep with offensive linemen. Maybe they wait till the second round. What if you you take those 2 first-round picks and you trade up to go after one of those top 2 or 3 receivers? Because that's their big need, right? They need a alpha dog on the wide receiving core.
Yep.
So that's what I could see happening. I don't know if the Ravens are traditionally that aggressive, but
hell, I wouldn't be mad if Philly gave up number 12 for number 27 and 31. I wouldn't be mad at all. That puts them up there to get a quality receiver,
I mean, we assume Chase and the guy out of Alabama will be gone by that point, right? Like
Chase, every mock draft is different, right? So every mock draft has, maybe Smith falling that far. You have Waddle coming out. We all think Chase is gone top 7, right? I'll just say top 7. But after that, the next couple wide receivers coming off could go anywhere, right? So it really all depends on what happens there. And then once you get past those 3, there's still a couple other. You got Bateman, you got Tony out of Florida. There's that kid out of Ole Miss that they're talking about a little bit now. He blew up pro day, 4.34, I think he ran.
Who knew Ole Miss would be such a wide receiver factory? That's crazy to me.
I mean,
well, I was going to say, just to kind of round this out, since we have the draft coming up, how do you guys think about draft picks? And what I mean by that is, there are 2 ways to look at it. I tend to look at either be real aggressive and just trade up and get the players you want, or trade back and take as many players as you can and just hope some of them pan out. Where do you guys see that? Because like I said, I think we've said it a couple times. This draft, there's going to be a lot. I think there's potential for a lot more movement than we're used to seeing. We've already seen it this offseason with quarterbacks. We're going to see, I think there's going to be a lot more movement in this draft. So and don't worry about your specific team. Just in general, do you think it's better to go up and get trade up and get one of those top receivers, or, trade back and get more picks just to have a better chance of hitting?
I honestly think it really depends on what products are coming out of the draft in that particular year. But I'm all for more picks and best player available when we get there. I think free agency is where you pick up and fill the gaps in your team, whether offense, defense. But best player available is what my next answer would be, although I would prefer to have more picks by trading back.
I think if you pick in the top 10, you're taking best player available, regardless of position, period. If you don't need to fill that position and you're picking in the top 10, like whatever they're projected at, then you trade out of the top 10. If you get to 10, it's if you're sitting at 11, 12, 13 and a need you need with the best player available is if you try to move up. Other than that, you move back. Take some picks. Take some picks.
Yeah, I feel like, especially for quarterbacks, it happens more than any other. I just feel like people lose their heads going after quarterbacks, and 90% of the time, it's not worth what they gave up to get them.
It's shifted tremendously, right? Like, we're going to see 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 10, possibly. The 5 quarterbacks are not the top player available. They're not the top prospect. There's a lot of players that are just beast, savage athletes that are going to fall out of the top 10 and be available to teams that probably don't need them. Well, you know what I mean? Like, just looking at Penn State alone, Penn State has some monsters coming out in this draft, like athletic freaks, at multiple positions. So, I mean, you got Micah Parsons. He's a freak. You have Owe. He's a freak. You have Shaka Toney, who no one's even talking about. He's going to fall into the 2nd or 3rd round. He's an athletic freak. Then you have their tight end. Somebody is going to get a stud tight end, 2nd, 3rd round coming out of Penn State. That dude's another athletic freak. It's, best player available is not typically what people go for. Especially once you get out of the top 10, you're drafted for need. But there's a lot of, so like I'm traded back, because people are going to reach for some, not only quarterback, they're going to reach for some of these wide receivers too, because they think that's the game today. They think that the game is offense, throw the ball downfield, get the ESPN top 10 highlight. But what wins championships? What wins championships?
But I hear what you're saying, but the game is slanted toward offense.
It is, but what wins championships? Running game, line. That's it.
What
Defense.
wins in the playoffs? I've covered this extensively. What wins in the playoffs is stopping the other team's running game, getting your running game going, and winning the turnover battle, which all obviously you can attribute to how good your defense is. But that being said, I think just in general, like to make it through the regular season, to have a shot at your defense winning the championship, you need to play the odds, and the odds say go offense because the game has changed now. So they want to see the 40-47 shootout on Monday Night Football between the Ravens and the Browns. They want to see the 52-60 or whatever it was a couple years ago with the Chiefs and the Rams. That's what they want to see now, and that's what they're making the rules to produce. So I feel like to get to the playoffs, you have a much better chance if you're making offensive moves in general.
I agree that that's the trend where it's been going, but I still think, I don't know, maybe I'm a unicorn in this situation, but when I see a 47-43, I see there was no defense played, and that was probably tough to watch in certain aspects of the game. Is it exciting? It's exciting, but I think your better games are probably when it's like a 30-25, somewhere you know that defense showed up, offense showed up, and it wasn't real messy.
How much was it to buy? Loy, you talked about a couple of weeks ago to buy what was it, like a stake in the?
I think it was the Chargers. Wasn't it the Chargers?
They got us what? 50%? What was it? 15%?
15%, 300 mil. Like
That's
there's like four siblings all have 15%, right? And one of them just wants out, right? That's the word on the street. So based on, what their valuation is, that's 300 mil.
I mean, if
We
we were
need
to
to
get
start a
that,
GoFundMe.
we could promote ourselves as GM, right? We could just put these.
It would be the football trash talk for real fan group would be the GM. It would be fucking
we could just take
phenomenal.
polls in the group and
There would be any fights whatsoever during those boardroom discussions.
Atticus, you could we should get a GoFundMe going. We can get this done. Let's do it. I got a solid.
Let's go
on this.
Let's do it.
That's like 1%, right? We So you said there's 50 of us. If we all dropped like 3,000, that's halfway there. We can get there. We'll figure it out.
100 million. Jeez.
That's just ungodly, a number, right? Like, I mean, $300 million. And somebody's got that shit laying around.
Well, it's weird. So just to put, and I'll just kind of end on this story. This has like really nothing to do with football, but when I used to work for Chase, and the Chase branch that I worked at kind of served a more affluent area of Orlando. And so just so you guys know, like where I live here in Orlando, I'm actually not that far from like where Tiger Woods has a residence, Shaquille O'Neal has a residence. I mean, obviously I'm not in their neighborhood, but it's not that far from where I live. And I actually, one of my clients at Chase was the guy who reupholsters Shaquille O'Neal's like couches and stuff. Like every season, Shaq just like changes the upholstering in his living room, right? We're talking like imported Italian leather and just like, sheepskin from sheeps that are at the top of Mount Everest, like just crazy stuff, right? Like, and we got into a discussion about like, how much, like he was just giving me a ballpark figure of how much Shaq pays him to do this. And we were talking about it, and he was saying like, I was like, man, if you could just give me like 30 million, I forget where 30 million came from exactly. I was like, if you gave me 30 million, like I could live the rest of my, I could like leave money to my grandkids because I know enough to make that last. Like I could leave them a decent chunk of change if you just gave me $30 million tomorrow. Like the next 4 generations of my family wouldn't have to work. And he's like, yeah, well, it's weird if you think about it. There are people in this country that make that a day. Like they make 30 million today. You're talking about that lasting the rest of your life. And then they go out tomorrow and they make another 30 million. And that's just crazy. Like I don't know why that came up and why I'm talking about this right now. I remember that conversation. That just blew my mind.
I don't even need 30. I could figure it out with 6 to 10. I could figure it out. Right. And like live like a crazy person, like be extravagant in my first year and get everything like that I would desire, and then just call it a day. And invest the rest, and just live off that shit. And my kids will be set. Fuck it. Call it a day.
Yeah, I could probably get, if someone gave me like 10 million, I could get through the first million pretty quickly, buying a house, a crazy car, some sort of stupid vacation. Like I could get through the first million pretty quickly, but after that, I have no idea what I do.
It's stupid money is what it is.
Meanwhile, billionaire Atticus over there, I'm on to him. He's just like silly mortals with your.
No, listen, it's what I've learned is you can get to a point where making money isn't hard, right? But if you're not replacing what you're spending, you're doing it all wrong, all of it. You know, I've had clients who've come to me and they've inherited money or got money through some type of settlement or whatever the case may be. And they really think that they hit the jackpot. Like, I'm set for life. I'm like, bro, you got $800,000. That shit will be gone by August if you don't have a plan. And guess what happens? August rolls around and they're broke. I had a client call me once. She moved by you, Chris. She called me from the supermarket and said, can you do me a favor? Can you, Cash App or whatever the hell it was, can you send me some money? I'm in the line at the grocery store and I can't pay my bill. This woman had $1.2 million a year before. She's crying and we're way off the topic of sports, right? She's crying, but she's like, I'm looking in my Louis Vuitton wallet and don't even have enough to pay for my food. And I couldn't help her. And I didn't feel like I was obligated to, but I tried to tell her money goes quick is the point I'm making. And if you're not replacing it, you better have a plan.
Yeah, I feel like we could have a Money Talks podcast.
We could do another podcast and go down this road. This is a little preview of things to come, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, speaking of
$1.2 million, like, I mean, see, my plan is that I try to be a minimalist, and like, I don't need more than what I have, right? It would be nice to drive a Porsche, but do I need a Porsche?
Well, nobody needs them. You know the guy who drives a Porsche, why he drives it? Because he can.
Yeah.
He don't need that shit, but he can have it.
Yeah.
Well, the smart guys. Because you got some people who they went into their IRA to buy a Porsche. That's stupid.
That's dumb.
Right? But listen, there are a lot of those people out here, bro.
I mean, think about back to sports. How many tales do we hear of these millionaires being broke by the time they're 32, 33 years?
Who was it? Antoine Walker that was like playing basketball in like middle of Mexico or something like that because he needed money to pay taxes or something. Like, yeah, I mean, I even remember watching Hard Knocks when it was on the Cleveland Browns, and there was this thing they were talking about the money they were making, and they're like, oh, well, you got to go with the rule of 72 and all this stuff. And I'm like, because they were talking about Dave Ramsey, who's a whole nother thing that I don't even want to. That guy, I don't like that guy, but that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But yeah, it's crazy. I just, that much money just to be gone, like, oof. Like I said, I could get through $1 million pretty quickly if you gave it to me and said just go balls out. Like, but even then, I would never buy a Porsche. I might buy a nicer version of the car I currently have. You know, like that would be what I would do. But then again, I'm wired weird because I have like, if you gave me all the money in the world, I'd still probably only buy like a $400,000 house because I don't want to take care of a $16 million house. So, because I'm lazy. So
because then you're paying somebody else to take care of it for you.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, right?
What the only splurge purchase, the only thing I would do, this would be my one splurge purchase, is I would hire some sort of chef that just, here's your salary, here's a budget for the food. I want some sort of crazy good meal, like 5 nights a week, and I'll go out and have dinner the rest. But like that would be my one splurge thing. I would have like a personal chef if I had like a ton of money.
The real question is, and I think we should post this on the page, is how many New York Knicks hats does Atticus own? right? Like I see 5 right now in the picture, and I know that's not all of them. I know it's not. So we should do some like random question giveaway shit. Give out some swag, right? How many New York Knicks hats does Atticus own?
I have fanatics.com on speed dial.
Do you even know Atticus how many Knicks hats you have?
I don't know. I never really counted them, to be honest.
If you were to put an over under, if you were just to take a ballpark guess.
Well, I throw some out over time. So I normally keep a stock of about 20.
So there was at one point where there's this hat line where they would take like mascots of colleges, but kind of make them like PG-13. So like Georgia Tech, it said Buzz, just like stuff that was like kind of like, alcohol related, or they had like LBJ State and just stuff like that. And so I collected those for me. I think at one point I got up to like 12. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest collection of anything I've ever had, other than outside of baseball cards and stuff. But yeah,
my Giants hat collection is disgusting.
So it's bigger. It's bigger than your Knicks collection.
Yeah, it's bad, Mike. It's bad.
I mean, how many blue hats that say NY on them do you really need?
You don't. You do it because you can. It's just like the Porsche. You don't need it.
Well, so unfortunately, my stuff, the stuff that I collect is like absurd. Like I have a $1,000 Mont Blanc JFK pen. It's a fountain pen. Mont Blanc comes out with like they do like memorial. Like there's a Walt Disney pen, there's an Albert Einstein pen, and they all have like little different things that mean different things on things. But yeah, I have a John F. Kennedy $1,000 Mont Blanc fountain pen. It's probably like the single most extravagant thing I own. But other than that, I'm a minimalist. So, I got my tag on. It's all good.
Your tag. Okay. So what are we talking about next week?
Draft recap,
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's right. I'm excited about that. We'll probably
have the final round of the drafts going while we're talking, I'd assume. It will need to be a little bit later next week just because I am coming. I'll be coming back from Hollywood, Florida. So probably a little bit later in the afternoon that I get back, like say 2 or 3. I'll let you guys know, but it'll probably be a little bit later next week.
All right,
guys.
And I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can talk her into the on her birthday podcast of the draft. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
at least through the top 15.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
watch the first round anyway because Green Bay's not going to pick toward the end. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what we can do.
All right.
We will lose one game between now and next week. So our winning streak will come to an end as the New York Knicks, but we're still going to the playoffs, baby.
If you don't make the playoffs at this point, that's an utterly disastrous downfall.
That would be disgusting.
If you don't make the playoffs at this point, one of our future podcasts will just be me laughing for a solid 45 minutes.
And I would deserve it. But, the only thing that could stop that from happening would be injury. That's it. They're just playing too well.
Well, I would laugh if I was injured.
Yeah, it would be some kind of a horrific injury. And not for nothing, we had 2 centers go down in one game and still found a way to win with our 4th string center.
Well, and I don't think you have a good center, right? Like, I mean, I think that's the one area on your team that if you were to bring in, I think I posed you the question last week, put Embiid in the middle on the New York Knicks. Their finals contention, period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what.
I think we have 3 competent centers. We don't have 3 above the line, above average centers. Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel are tremendous at shot blocking. Tremendous. The pick and roll that in the chemistry that Mitchell Robinson has with our point guards is 30 times better than anybody else on our team. Taj Gibson, he's just got that veteran, knows where to be, how to play, how to move, how to pivot. basketball IQ that makes him a valuable person on our team. But are any one of them dominant? Absolutely not. But they play well within our offensive and defensive schemes, which helps them to win games. But the shot blocking ability by these guys, Nerlens Noel is unbelievable at his shot blocking abilities. He has blocked shots to keep us in the lead where we'd be down by 1 after a team's clawing back. Block a shot that brings the momentum right back into the Knicks, and they end up winning that game. So they're pretty good.
Knicks have a treacherous road trip coming up.
They do.
All right. So, like, they got 2 games. They got Phoenix and Chicago at home before they hit the road.
Right.
I think they lose to Phoenix.
Right.
They better
let me
beat
ask
Chicago.
you this question real quick, both of you guys, and then I need to wrap up actually.
Yeah.
Because you both have done a magnificent job of projecting Knick wins over 5 and 8 game stretches. Magnificent. Where will we be? What will be our record of our next 5 games?
Let's just do the rest of the season.
No, we can't do the rest of the season because injuries happen too quickly. You don't know.
But there's only 5, 6, 7,
it's like 14
8, 9,
games
10,
left, right?
11. You have 11 games left.
Okay, let's do 11 games.
Can I get here the schedule first?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it up.
Phoenix at home.
Phoenix at New York.
Phoenix in New York. I think they lose.
Loss.
Chicago at home. They win.
Win.
Houston. Now the next 6 games are on the road. At Houston.
Win.
At Memphis.
Win.
At Denver.
Loss.
At Phoenix.
Loss.
At Clippers.
Win.
At Lakers.
Really? Okay.
Clippers, I just don't. They're good. I don't know. There's just something about them. Something seems off with that team. At Lakers,
depends who's healthy, right?
Yeah, it depends. The Lakers depends on where they are in the standings because, like, I could see LeBron and AD taking that game off. So that's a toss up. That
they done took the last 15 off anyway.
Yeah, right? They have.
It could depend on where they
just
are.
Resting up for the playoffs. I hate that, by the way, which again is another notch as to why LeBron will never be the GOAT. End of story. Just saying. And Chris, I know you love that.
I'm just gonna go ahead and ignore that and say if the Knicks make the finals, I will buy a.
They're not making the finals.
Never mind then. I was gonna say I buy an Obi Toppin jersey.
6.
So you said that a couple of weeks ago, so that's not new.
Well, I'm reiterating my willingness to buy an Obi Toppin.
5 and 6, 4 and 7. I'll give them 5 and 6 out of their last 11. The road trip is treacherous.
Well, it's to the West Coast too, which is unfortunate.
This is a tough stretch. It's hard to really figure the Knicks, and I'm a Knicks fan. I'm like sick. You guys know this. This is not new information for you, but the Knicks in flashes will play like they are already playing good, but there are times when they play unbelievable, where you're like, there's no way they're going to win this game. Like we beat the Bucks twice this year. Okay, the first time they had all their players. The second time they were down. Giannis didn't play, right? We beat Boston, destroyed them. Now I know I'm talking about in the East right now, but then we'll play a team like the Mavericks and look like shit, and then play them again and beat them. And not for nothing, when we beat the Mavs the second time, while the score was fairly close, the gameplay was not that close. We were handling the shit out of Dallas when we played them. Play the Warriors. We lose by 8 points. And it was a closer game than that. They just closed it out a little bit better and made their shots during the end of that game. But the last 11, you said 5 and 6, largely because we've got a road stretch playing the Western Conference. That's probably right, but I think you can make an argument to say that they'll go 7 and 4 also.
They could.
You really got to see. I don't know.
They could, and I think Chris brought up a great point. Like, it depends on who's playing. Like, our team is going to start sitting people. Like, that's, we're at the end of the season, and if you're locked in, the NBA is a day off kind of league anyway. So,
but momentum means something too.
It does.
The Knicks has incredible momentum right now.
Dude, Julius Randle is playing lights
unbelievable
out.
He can't even believe how he playing.
Lights out. That's the one.
Hold on a second. Not just Julius Randle. How about Derrick Rose?
How about Barrett? Barrett's
Obi
playing
Toppin,
well.
Chris's boy hitting 3-pointers like it's nothing.
Can I say the one Achilles heel of the Knicks, especially as they get into the playoffs, is going to be? They have good players. Don't get me wrong. No. They have good players. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to turn the corner here. They're going to be. They have good players. They don't have the superstar, and
they don't.
That's what Denver ran into those few years after they got rid of Carmelo Anthony. It's just what happens. They're going to run into a team that's got a couple superstars that run into Miami, and that superstar is going to get all the calls because that's how the NBA works, and that's ultimately what's going to do the Knicks in. They need that superstar player that's going to get those calls in crunch time. And
they need a superstar center. They need every other position is solid for the Knicks. And I agree with what you said about their center play for this season, right? But if they have a superstar center, lights out.
Well, you know who's a free agent at the end of this year, I think. I'm pretty sure I'd have to look it up again. But isn't AD a free agent after this year?
He is.
Well, everybody, that wraps up our show for this week. Thanks for listening.
I don't know. California's in a fucking...
Here's a random weekly fun fact for you.
I might want to...
Per our crack research team here at the Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast, it took 16 presidential election cycles, a civil rights movement, 2 world wars, a trip to the moon, the birth of rock and roll, more than 26 seasons of Law and Order, all before the Eagles could figure out how to win a Super Bowl. Anyway, this has been the Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast. It's been a pleasure, and as always, F your team. Stay safe out there.